and sometimes I couldn't stop crying. Yeah, I knew on some level that I was letting go of a lot of things. And that was grief, it was grieving this old way of life.
Three, two, one, yeah!
After leaving the corporate 9-to-5 grind, I became the boss of my own spiritual business, helping others explore and navigate the human experience from insight, wisdom, and lessons learned along the way. Today, I help aspiring spiritual entrepreneurs gain the confidence to share their gifts with the world. Welcome to the Happy Healing Shop podcast. I'm your host, Trang Pham Nguyen, and each week we'll dive into incredible stories of strength, resilience, and transformation. So, if you are ready for some serious breakthroughs, laughs and tears, and stories that will inspire you, you are in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Hey there, friend. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Healing Shop podcast. I'm your host, Trang Pham Nguyen. And now I've got a truly inspiring guest to share with you today, how a healing massage business saved a former addict. Now we're diving deep into the incredible journey of a woman who has overcome unimaginable challenges. She's battled addiction for nearly a decade. And let me tell you, she is not just a survivor, she is a thriver. Can you believe she used to faint almost every night? And she was surprised that she didn't die. Now, here's the twist. The same place she worked, a spa, held the key to her transformation. What turned her life around, you ask? It was her unshakable determination to create something beautiful. She opened her very own business, and it wasn't just any business. It was her passion, her purpose, her lifeline. Her story is proof to the incredible power of human potential. Today is a story that reminds us that no matter how dark life may seem, there's always a path to turn it around and reinvent yourself. You won't want to miss this one, so let's dive right in. Welcome to the show, Christina.
Hi, Trang. Hey.
I am so excited to have you because your story is incredible. So first of all, I want to preface to anyone listening in that I met you because you were my former massage therapist, and I stopped seeing you once I moved far away from you. And yeah, that was sad. But yeah, you were incredible with the healing work that you do. And I want people to know more about that. But I want to also for people to know about your history. Like recently when you texted me and everything like that. And I think that's where you can inspire so many people. So first of all, we know that being an entrepreneur is not a smooth journey.
No.
Success does not come overnight. It's a lot of hard work, lots of self-doubt. But first of all, like, how did you actually get started in massage therapy? Was that something you've always wanted to do? Or it's just like one of those things where you just did it as a gig and then you're like, you know what? I can do it. I'll just keep doing it.
It's actually, so I've always been sort of attracted to massage. And then my mom was a psychic. And so like the whole spiritual world I was used to, and fascinated by, but I thought I wanted to act. And I went to a commercial acting agent who was pretty big at the time, and auditioned for her. And I was SAG in the Screen Actors Guild, and she loved me, but she was like, your cold reading is awful, which it was. And she's like, please, and she couldn't send me out anyways because SAG was on strike at that time. So she'd like, go out there, spend a month doing cold reading classes. If you're great, I'll sign you up. So excited, was so excited. But I had just put down the extra money that I had left on acting school, or not acting school, on massage school, because I thought I was going to use that as a backup job to the acting. I got in the massage school and I completely forgot about the acting agent and all of that. I fell in love with massage. So, yeah.
What makes it so fulfilling for you, or what made you fall in love with it? Because it is a lot of heavy, laborious work.
Yeah, it is. But honestly, I think because of it was certain training, and also because I think it comes more naturally. And when you love something, it isn't as much work. I think what I fell in love with was the fact that I was able to help people, and people were just so responsive, and, oh, my neck feels a lot better, or, even emotionally, like, oh, it was sad and now I feel a lot lighter. And, so just the fact that I could help others.
Yeah, was that something that, I guess you can say the transformation afterwards, what people told you made you fall in love with it more? It's kind of like one of those things where um, people might start off with something like a gig or a job, but they see the after effects of it. And then when it helps other people heal, serve them, make them feel better, they're like, oh, in a way, it makes you feel better about what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't think I had realized how insecure I was when I was that young. And so I think a lot of my wanting to get into the business came a lot from ego and wanting to be seen and heard. And then thinking in my mind, oh, yeah, when I get to a certain place, like financially, then I can help others, financially through whatever. Um, but looking back on it now, it was all coming sort of stemming from ego. So the massage really helped me, getting into massage really helped me see that, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And then when you started this journey, what are some lessons or challenges that you had as an entrepreneur? I know there's many, but I guess if you had to give everyone listening in a little glimpse into it.
For me, financially, um, making money was always tough for me. And I could do pretty much any job like that I put my mind to, but I got bored very easily. And I also did not like um authority in that sense. And honestly, like a constructed system, if you will, getting up at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time, having to, do things a certain way or talk a certain way when you're in the business fields. I did reception work, I did hostessing, I did one of the things I loved to do was background work for TV shows and movies, and that was a lot of fun. There was a lot more freedom with that. But your everyday 9 to 5 stuff, I really just had a tough time because I just am more artistic and more free. And I also get nervous around authority and people looking over me. So I think in the beginning for me, financially, it was very tough. Um, like I said, I had already put the money that I had saved up down on massage school. So, and back then, massage school was a lot cheaper. It was owned by your everyday people who are already in that business, like families who, had generations of massage therapists. And they would open up a school. Now it's owned by trade schools and they charge way more. People are in debt when they get out of trade school. It's a lot longer. It's 9 months as opposed to a 3 month thing. And yeah, so I was lucky back then where it only cost a certain amount. And my teachers also were amazing. So financially, that was the biggest issue, was just getting started. And I think I was doing background work at that time for shows. So I was able to do it, to do the school and also work as well.
Yeah, I think people don't realize also with the line of work, we talked about this before, is that because you do massage therapist, it's hands-on work. If you
Mhm.
don't work, you don't get paid.
That's
And
right.
also having your own business now, you don't get vacation days. So if, you just came back from your honeymoon, congratulations.
Thank you.
And but the thing is, if those weeks that you didn't work, you
Yeah.
didn't get any clients.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally like am in debt, and it's mainly not from the wedding as much as it is the fact that I couldn't work. And so I couldn't pay certain, so I'm backlogged
Right.
financially,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
think that's like the trade-off of like what you said, entrepreneurship, the line of work that you do, and also like you said, you and I both love entrepreneurship because the freedom, the flexibility, creating your own schedule, not having to because most of the time a lot of jobs have poor management, and so
Yeah.
responding to bad authority,
Yeah.
and
Power
them
trippers.
dictating how to do it when the people working are the ones that kind of know how to do it better. So there are some trade-offs, and especially the line of work that you do. Now,
exactly.
with this next part, I was and this was recent when you text me. We were just texting back and forth, and I did not know this about you. And I was like, okay, I got to have you on my show. But your background, meeting you, I never would have thought of this at all. But, and this is where they say, don't judge a book by its cover, right? But you had a background when
Which
you were
is great.
younger.
I'm glad you're saying this, considering my background. So this is great. Right on.
Yeah. But you were telling me that you, in the past, for almost over a decade, you were using hard substances. And so in the beginning of your journey, even before then. And so I kind of want to dig in and ask about like maybe what was your why on using it? How did it all begin? Like, can you share your story about that journey through addiction?
Okay. In the beginning, in like early 20s, of course, it was like, having fun drinking. I never was much of a drinker though. Alcohol, I just couldn't stand the taste and I hated the after effects of it. But I was very much into that spiritual realm and like kind of, I guess, sort of hippie-ish, I guess. And I was very much into metaphysical things and things like that. So I got into things like mushrooms with friends. For me, it was more so a spiritual thing. It wasn't like, you know, oh, cool, whatever. It was very much tapping in and a lot of times I would get things that would help me out in life, and I could retain that the next day. I was a huge pot smoker. I did love smoking pot, and that eventually became, in the beginning, it wasn't that much, and eventually it became a 24/7 thing. But I guess so. I've always sort of had the addict mentality. And I always tell people too, I probably should have known when I was a little girl. I would climb up on the kitchen counter and get into the cabinet. And I loved cough syrup and I loved Pepto-Bismol. And I always tell myself, I probably should have realized that, like, had I remembered that when I was doing all those things, like, hello, like, you may have some issues with substances, But anyways, yeah. So got into that, the hardcore substances in my 20s. I was fairly, I would say, sort of like a rigid person, even though it was open spiritually. I was kind of very judgmental. Had I, to be honest, had I learned if a friend was doing certain drugs or whatever, I probably would not have continued that friendship because of all of the judgments and the connotations that come with it. And I just didn't feel like they could be a true friend. And that's horrible to say. But I also believe this is why I had to go down this journey, was to learn all of these things. So yeah, so I started using the hard substances in my 30s, and I started off, it was a friend who would just bring certain things over, or a certain substance over, and we would just do that substance, and it was no big deal. I was moving from California to Utah, and I was buying a house at 29 years old, and thought I was done with the whole LA thing and massage and all this stuff, and that I wanted the white picket fence and normal life and all of that. And at that time, I had been dating a person who I was best friends with in my 20s. And when I moved, long story short, he ended up moving in with me. A year later, I sold the house, moved back to LA, and his friend had come over. My boyfriend at the time had never done this substance. His friend had come over with the substance, and he actually tried it, and he was like, oh, he used to judge me for doing it, and he was like, oh, like, I understand why you like this now. That turned into fairly quickly an almost everyday thing, for every night thing for probably close to 7-8 years. So became a full-time job.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that's the thing. I think you sharing that just shows kind of like dispels the misconception of how people think people get into hardcore drugs.
yeah,
Where it could be literally someone being like, bringing it over and being like, hey, do you want to try this? And people like, okay, fine. And then they get hooked on it, or it makes them feel really good, you know?
exactly.
hmm
Yeah, and for me, it wasn't ever really about like going to a rave or like partying like that. For me, it was always, I loved sitting across, the table with someone who was another good friend who could talk spiritually, intellectually, and like ask questions about themselves. And it seemed like when people were on this certain substance, that could be opened more, so that people were more open, and I was more open, and I felt like I was learning things about myself quicker than, had I just been living life or asking certain questions I normally wouldn't have asked myself.
How did you maintain your daily working life while functioning as a hardcore addict during that time?
Um, Kind of, I was functioning. I say I was kind of sort of functioning barely. I always had a hard time again with structure. I later found out around 27 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And then later in life, around 39 years old, it's interesting how things come in 10-year increments for me. I was diagnosed with bipolar 2. So I think that also has a lot to play into the fact that I am not well with structure and things like that. I get distracted very easily. All of that. And so I was able to support myself, and a lot of the times, the person that I was with before. Um, and I probably would have done better at supporting myself had I not used a lot of that money for that substance. That being said, I was very much like I would always have a roof over my head. I thought I had the whole misconception that if I have a roof over my head and I can feed myself and I can still go to work and still make money, that I'm not really an addict. So that was my, I, no, I'm just having
Yeah.
fun, you know?
Mm, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Kind of like that is a good point of just kind of in a way lying to yourself, being like, I'm all right. I'm not hitting rock bottom like everyone else. I have a job just like everyone. I'm okay. I'm balanced,
exactly.
you know? Uh,
Exactly.
wow. Um,
Yeah.
what was that moment where you realized like, hey, okay, I can't do this anymore. I need to change this and break free or change my life around.
Um, Once, like a few years went by and like, the friends have sort of gone and you're still using, and you really have nothing to talk about with your significant other because you're not really doing much with your life, other than that. So there's not much, to talk about, and things get really boring. And then they also sort of they tend to get really scary. I would was hard to say, but I would pass out kind of like some nights just because I did have to get up and go to work. So I would stop using and then I would start, drinking and smoking marijuana to try to, get to bed. Um and because of that, obviously I am a small girl. Um Obviously all of it was too much for my system and I would just pass out. That was another reason why I was thinking like this is becoming a problem. And also the fact that like as much as I could say, oh, okay, yeah, like I'll do a little bit tonight, but I'm just gonna do a little bit. I'm not gonna like go crazy. And like once you realize that you can't even have it in front of you and you can't fool yourself, you're gonna like want to stay up until that substance is gone. Um, yeah, it was like, wow, okay, maybe I have a problem, So yeah. And also too, honestly, like going to work and I would say to my clients that I had allergies. because a lot of times I would be, my eyes would be running, or, my nose would be running. And so I would have to say, I have allergies, and like pretty much constantly. And it was harder to do my work because I was having to constantly take care of myself more while I was taking care of somebody else.
Wow. Yeah. How, so if for people that don't use drugs and stuff like that, if there was a night that you didn't use the hardcore stuff, um, did it feel, because using these substances, you felt more connected and opened and that kind of stuff. But what does it feel like when you don't use it?
I was drained. I was completely drained. Um, and that's the other thing about me too, is even though I was really addicted, again, if I didn't have it around, yeah, I missed it, but I never was like jonesing per se. Um, I'd be maybe sad that I didn't have it, and I'd feel like drained and that I couldn't like get my laundry done or whatever I needed to do. But again, that misconception of, or misperception of, if I'm jonesing, if I feel like I need this, if I feel like my body needs this, then I'm an addict. So I very much, I feel like, sort of walked the balance of those two extremes. So,
Yeah.
or
And
tried to walk the balance.
yeah, you told me that the boss at your spa that you're working at knew this was going on, and she actually served as your spiritual teacher in a way. So, how did she help your journey for recovery? What was it, something she did? Was it something she said?
It wasn't necessarily any of that, and it was sort of unspoken. I don't think she knew to what extent I was doing it at. I know that she understood it, because she had grown up in a certain time where, that stuff was a bit more open. And we had already been working sort of, she had already been working with me on a spiritual level. And how can I explain that? I had certain hangups, certain things, um, and she would be able to talk it through with me. And rather than put myself down, understand where it came from and have ways of acknowledging it and dealing with it. So, oh, a little kitten. Yeah, so she had already been there for me like that. I think the biggest way that she helped me was the fact that she never judged me. And as long as I did my work and I was okay, there's kind of like this unconditional trust that she had for me. And I think also too, I think when you get to a certain age, you realize that if you tell someone, no, 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 don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, most of us are always just going to keep doing it. Or if you feel judged about something, then that makes you feel worse. And you're going to want to do that something even more so. So I think she was really motherly in the sense that she knew how to walk the line when dealing with all of that. Again, I don't think she knew how much I had been doing until probably years later. So, yeah, but she knew, but I don't think at to the extent. So,
Yeah. Wow. Um, yeah, I had another podcast episode that talked about addiction, but with alcohol addiction, with another guest speaker, and they were saying the same thing, similar lines of someone being there and not judging and being supportive, or saying like, "Hey, let's just sit down and talk about what's going on here," instead of,
mhm.
like you said, just instead of no, 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 don't do this. This is bad for you, etc.
Yes, yeah,
So,
yeah.
mm,
Which for me was always because an early age, I knew I sort of had an interesting childhood. You know, realizing as I got older, I think everyone does. In mine, I don't think was necessarily bad compared to a lot of stories I have heard. But again, it was, you know, my parents had gotten divorced. I didn't see much of my dad, so I thought, oh, you know, what's wrong with me? And all of these things carried over. And so in my early 20s, in my teenage years, I started realizing certain things, and I went to counseling, and I really always wanted to know why I've always been fascinated with people and why they do things, and myself, and why do I do things, and where does this come from, and I guess just psychology, you know, and physiology, and all of that.
Yeah, I think that's why we
So
get along so well because we talk to each other a lot about that stuff.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it's not just, you know, yeah, there's always a root to things, you know, where they come from.
Yeah, there's more than what is shown on the surface for
That's
sure.
right. That's right.
This part, I was like, what? But you mentioned to me that you never went through rehab. So how the heck were you able to overcome addiction? Like, how did you survive?
So again, I mean, it's interesting because with this certain substance, people do go to rehab for it, but I've actually also learned too that you don't necessarily um I guess there is a physical addiction. Again, I never really felt that, you know. It was very weird. I think the only time I ever really felt it uh was if I couldn't have it like forever, you know. Um so the way I stopped was I had started getting to a point where I realized I just couldn't. I also smoked cigarettes at that time too, and I'm asthmatic. So all of this really sort of came to a head at a certain point. I ended up in the emergency room with an asthma attack. And it was pretty scary. I was in ICU for, I think, 3 or 4 days, and then regular room for 2 or 3 more days. And it really hit. And I was like, this is because I've abused my body so bad. Um, so I ended up stopping that. I got back into yoga, because that when I woke up, I would take yoga classes, and that would help ground me. And before I went to bed, I would take yoga classes too, and that also helped ground me, keep me centered. And there's something about doing yoga for me where it helped take away that wanting to do that and recenter myself and realize what's important. I ended up realizing too that I had been doing 14 years of working for other companies, sometimes 3 companies at one time, because like you said earlier, especially back then, if you don't have a client, you didn't get paid. So, you know, if I work a 4-hour shift somewhere and I only have 1 or 2 clients, then I've got to go to my second job and work another 4-hour shift or 6-hour shift or whatever, and pray that I have more clients. Um, so um, that wasn't so much of a problem for me because I was, you know, not to my own horn, I was good at what what I do. But it was a lot of work for very little money. And after a while, it just takes a toll on you. So I realized like I need to go out on my own. I need to start my own business. And I started sort of checking out other places while I was working at that spa. That spa actually was the only place that I had worked at by that time. Um, and I had house calls and things like that, but that was it. And so I started looking, and then one day a client came to me. Her name, actually, I think I can say this, is Angel, which is very interesting. And she said, "Oh, you're looking for a place. Well, I know of." Oh, my kitty cat is trying to play with my headphones here. Um, she said, "Oh, I know of the massage therapist I saw before you. she's getting rid of her business and she's actually looking for someone to take over her business. Would you want to go and check it out? And I did, and I loved the space. I loved the town. And so that I realized I worked 6 months there until that person moved. And then I took things over full time and dropped my spa. But I realized once I started that like I had two choices, either to keep going down this one road that wasn't serving me anymore, or to actually go down this other road that had been my dream for a long time. And so I had an opportunity. So I stopped. I fully stopped. And also you just you couldn't do that, you know?
When you said you stopped, did you stop cold turkey?
Yeah. Which is why it's funny to me, like looking back on it, I need to do more research maybe on it, because I'm thinking there's some type of like, it's not, I don't know. I mean, I was doing quite a bit, but um I don't I don't know, maybe I don't know why I never really had the withdrawal. I know emotionally, like once I stopped, and I had stopped everything, smoking, marijuana. The only thing I didn't stop was cigarettes for a long time. Um, so I actually had emotionally, I had a lot of breakdowns to myself, a lot of crying, a lot of realizations, a lot of regret. Um, in knowing that I would have to really change my life and that I had a lot of work to do. So,
Yeah. And when you were talking about going, from different places, like let's say massage places like that, like two or three working at one time, client to client to client, um, I know each place is different, but how much of these massage company places, how much percent do they actually take of a cut? Because I don't think people are aware of how much they take
oh
sometimes.
yeah, and it's gotten worse in the 25 years that I've been in the business. In the beginning, the less you ever got was $20. And that was usually a base, and it would be like $20 maybe for an hour of Swedish massage. Certain places, they raise the rate if you do deep tissue. So maybe you get $25, or you get $5 extra for, an extra half hour. So there's little add-ons. On top of that, you get your tips. And in most places, except for a couple of spas that will remain nameless that I hated working at, you got your tips on that day. So that was always how I was able to keep doing the substance that I was doing, is I would use my tips for that day. And so, and you usually got anywhere between 15 to 30, $40, depending on if it was an hour or deep tissue or an hour and a half, if the person was generous or not. And that was good money, at least for then, and like how much things cost. Now it's gotten outrageous. Like certain companies, which I'm not going to talk about because I don't know if I could get in trouble, but it's the whole like, okay, you can sign up for a membership thing, a monthly membership, and then you get a free massage a month and you get a discount on massages. They don't realize that they're paying these therapists sometimes as little as $12 an hour. $12 an hour,
My
and they'll
God.
say, oh, but you can get your benefits here. You can get health benefits here. You're not making enough to be able to even pay for those health benefits, So these therapists are burning out really quickly, and they end up hating what they're doing, and of course the clients don't know that. And a lot of times clients will pay, oh, I'll pay 15% or 20%. That happens to be great. Well, if it's a $60 massage and, the person's only getting $12 tip, it's like, so, the industry has gotten really, and then on top of that, when I went to school, it was $1,200 for 3 months of schooling. And you end up getting your license out. You apply for your license after that. You get certified, then apply for your license. Now it's 9 months, and it's 40 grand in these trade schools. And it's basically more about the business side of it, and not like they'll teach you
Hands-on
that.
work.
Yeah, they'll teach you the hands-on work, but they don't teach like I was taught, where these were like, it's more technical, instead of, there's also, again, once again, I keep using the word spiritual, but there's also a spiritual energetic exchange there as well, you know? So yeah, I think I
Yeah,
answered
wow.
your question.
Yeah, yes. That I wanted people to know because when you told me, because I go to massages and it's $60 to $90 for an hour, and you think at least the massage therapist would get half. At,
Hmm. Hmm.
but
And it's worse in the Thai massage places. One, they don't have a table that they can lift up and down. They usually just have the cushiony table, if you will. And they're constantly bending, you know, and then they only get, like, I think, you know, the house gets, I think, $60 for a 90 minute. And if the therapist is lucky, they get half of that, if they're lucky. And then again, a lot of people will tip them $5, $10 tips, you know, and it's just you can't make a living off of that, especially
yeah,
nowadays, you know.
yeah, yeah. Um, that's crazy. And thanks for sharing all that so people know now. Because sometimes it's hard as consumers. Of course, it's nice to go to a cheap massage because you can afford it. But on the other end, it's like really thinking about what the other side receives too.
Right.
You know?
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity, because I try to let people know as much as I can. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And when you told me about some of the bigger chains that I know about, and I'm sure people listening in know about, and how much, like how little they give to the staff, it made me
Hmm.
really, I can see why you would want to start your own business and being like, hey, I'm working my ass off here, but I want that money to go to me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the bigger chains, if people are going to the bigger chains like spas,
Mm-hmm.
not places like Massage Envy or whatever, but like your actual spas, um, they'll tell the therapist, oh, if this client comes back and sees you, you know, and keeps seeing you, then your percentage of what you make goes up. I want to tell the clients, if they have a therapist they really like and they're noticing they're not able to get in to see that therapist, if they see that therapist in the hallway, in the spa, to actually ask, like, oh, I've been trying to get in to see you, like, you must be really busy. Because a lot of times what I ended up finding out is, people, when they call with these big name spas, it's a call center that they're calling into, and so they're just saying, oh, that person is busy, but we have this person. And I think that that is sort of a way of not having to pay out that extra to that therapist. So
Oh, the extra percentage.
yeah, like if they get like 10
Right.
clients who are constantly asking for them, that percentage just keeps going up and up and up and up. So then they're having to pay even more, even more, even more. So yeah, yeah, at least that was my experience.
Wow. Thanks for
And
a
to
little behind the scenes.
also give the tips straight to the massage therapist if you can. If you're in a huge place, don't give it to the house, because sometimes things go missing if it's given to the house and it doesn't go directly to the therapist. And then you have no way of proving that. So yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And I- wow, thanks.
I
That makes me sad.
know
Um,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you, thank you. It
yeah.
is. Mm-hmm.
And I think another thing I want to say is when you texted me this, oh, I just want to read it and share it, is about again you opening your own business, and what's it called? Having opening up your storefront and having your own business saved you because you said you finally had something you loved more than your addiction.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, because I never, there was that realization of like, you know, especially because I had someone else that I was doing it with, it's, I was like, wow, how long is this going to keep going on? And I know, like, I knew my body couldn't keep doing it and all of that. But again, it just becomes like normal in a sense. So yeah, it wasn't until I got my business and I realized like my dream is actually becoming manifest, and my dream has manifested, that I have to make that decision. And I didn't realize until later on, looking back, that's how I was able to stop. And maybe that's why I didn't have such a withdrawal. Because maybe, thinking about it now, if you don't have that thing, whatever it is that you love more than you love that substance, and especially if you don't love yourself, it starts with loving yourself first, um, then you probably have more of I'm sure you'd have way more of a withdrawal, because you feel like, I have nothing, what do I have? And especially if you've gotten to the point where you've allowed it to take your job or your family or whatever, so maybe that's the reason why I didn't, because I had something to go to. I had something that I loved and something that I was good at. And it took 6, 7 months until I was actually getting booked, you know. So it was hard in the beginning, but it just flourished.
Yeah. And do you think like did you ever go through a grieving process with your old self? Would
Oh
you say?
yeah, yeah, because that was all of that. So the 6, 7 months that it took to actually get my there was many days I would go um into my studio, and I would close the door to my studio, because I mean, I had a storefront, but of course you have a room. Close the door to my studio, and I would either turn on comedians on Spotify and laugh, or I would listen to certain music, and I would just lay on my bed and I would just cry. And sometimes I couldn't stop crying. Yeah, I knew on some level that I was letting go of a lot of things. And that was grief, it was grieving this old way of life, And also, I remember thinking like, oh, if I make it 2 years in the business, then they say your business has a chance of making it, And so I would always think, you always have that fear of like, what if this doesn't work out? I have to go back to doing what I did before, and and barely making a living, and then I don't want to do that, especially at a certain age. So then what else is there that I would love as much as, so it's all of that. So yeah, there was tons of crying in my room, and at the same time laughing hysterically in my room, because I mean, if anyone saw me, I probably would look like crazy, but it was my form of therapy, you know um and making sure that I wasn't getting too down. So I turn on comedians and just laugh, you know? So yeah.
Wow. Um, and I like that you are starting to incorporate yoga into your business as well, because it's funny because massage therapy and also yoga, it's getting the client back to their bodies,
Yeah,
which is what
thank you.
helped you.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So, um, and so if you for I guess looking back at the young Christina or just someone that's going through addiction that you did, or even people that are interested in being an entrepreneur, but they might be considering it or not, what advice would you tell them?
Um, there are so many things that, it depends on what they wanted to do. If they wanted to do massage therapy, one of the things I would say is don't open a storefront, especially now. Try to do house calls. If you do house calls, I realized, so when I closed my storefront, I had moved twice after that. And the place that I have landed in now is 40 minutes away from where my storefront was, where a lot of my clients were from. And so some of them followed, but there were some that was like, it's a long drive. And I understood that, because I most certainly, like, that's the last thing I want to do is get in a car and have to think and drive 40 minutes back. So I told certain clients that I knew that could also afford it, and that were, very special, I would say get on Amazon, buy a cheap $100 table, keep it at your house. You can fold it up, put it under your bed, keep it in your garage, whatever. I'll come there with everything else. But I don't want to lug my table, because that's what I did for 14 years before I opened and it's a lot of work. Even if you have a table that isn't that heavy, it's still a lot of work. And so that's what they did. So I would say if it's a massage therapist, don't open a storefront, especially in California. It's so expensive to do so. And it's just not worth it, even with what you could make, unless you have other therapists working for you or with you. And do house calls, or find a space if you have a home and you have a room that you can dedicate to it. With that, also doing it under the health laws, like having a bathroom that's connected to the studio, things like that, because you don't want to get in trouble with health laws. And still getting your business, still having your business license and keeping it legal. In general, I always tell people, follow your dreams. At the same time, I think especially in California, people come out here to act or to be, a singer or dancing and stuff like that. And it's like, that's wonderful and great. It's very hard, the percentage of people who actually get into it and can maintain that, and maintain the living that they may have maintained when they first got into the business. So always have a backup, always have something that, you want to have as a backup. What I learned from this pandemic was my business could get taken away. So I had to start thinking outside of the box, in like, what could I do if I couldn't do massage, if we have another shutdown again? And I had started thinking about the yoga, and I thought, oh, okay, I could have been doing that online with my clients. If when the shutdown happened, if I had that. So yeah, follow your dreams and follow your purpose, what you feel is your purpose, what you're driven to do. And at the same time, also have that balance of having something to fall back on, I guess, if you will. That was one of the things I had to learn as I got older, was, I heard a lot when I was younger, you could do anything, make your dreams come true, and getting out into the real world and realizing, like, not everyone
Yep.
cares about you like your mom cared about you. You know what I mean? So like, so yeah, so always have that. And as an addict, not to be so hard on yourself. Understand today is one day, tomorrow is another day. You can make changes at any time. That you're stronger than you ever thought you were, or that you think you may be now. You're stronger. You're so much stronger. And that in that case, you can do anything, because you're the one who controls your own body ultimately. So it's not like with a job where it's like, oh, if I get this audition, then that's great. No one, I can control whether I want to be addicted to something ultimately, not control whether I want to be ultimately, if I'm going to go down that path. So understand that and realize just how strong your body and mind are, and remember who you are and why you're here, and that there's so much more out there than what may be sitting in front of you.
I love that. And I love the fact that, as someone with ADHD and someone with bipolar, you are living proof that you can hold down your own business, So what area of LA is your new or current massage located, and where can people find out more about you and what you do?
So I am in Simi Valley, Ventura County. You can find out more about me on I am on Instagram under my name, Christina Zotti. And I do want to go back to what you were saying with the ADHD and the bipolar too. Um, there is a part in so I started my business, and then 2-3 years later, after I had my life was wonderful, the business was going great, I had broken up with that person, everything was going great, and yet I couldn't get up out of bed. um I ended up going to a psychologist that one of my clients had told me about, and that's when I realized that I did have, I was bipolar too, and that I had always been against pharmaceuticals, and I always thought like it was either situational or situational financial, for the depression, and not realizing that there was an actual condition, and that pharmaceuticals really do help for certain conditions, well, conditions in general. So that I do want to let people know that if you have something like that, or you suspect you have something like that. I had something going on ever since I was a little girl. I always knew that. It got worse as I got older. And that's another reason why I think I liked what I did, is that was a form of self-medicating, and keeping me more focused. So yeah, so if you think you have a situation, please go and see a counselor, or and don't judge being on something. If you're a diabetic and you need that insulin, you need that insulin. It's the same thing with mental health. So we need to stop with the stigmas. I had a stigma about it for a long time, and I wish I had it. Then again, I wouldn't be where I am,
Yeah.
now. But yes, okay, so going back, Instagram, um it for right now, and then also I am on Yelp under my name, Christina Zotti, and we will put the website up once that's back up.
Thank you so much for bringing up about uh, having medication,
Yeah.
because imagine how much life would be easier if we got treatment, the right treatment sooner
Well,
in life,
okay,
right?
so that's it. I mean, the thing is like my life was perfect. It was everything I wanted it to be, yet I couldn't get up out of bed. And so then I thought, oh, I'm lazy, or I'm spoiled, rather than like, no, you physically have something going on. And like, so there is help out there, and it's not because you're spoiled, and it's not because you're lazy, or all of the things that we tell ourselves. It's just we all have different chemistry going on. Some of us need more help than others.
Exactly. Amazing. I am still in awe, and thank you so much for such an inspiring story today. You are living proof, that a living example that people have the strength inside of them to really transform their life and to rewrite their story. So
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you, Trang. I feel the same way about you. I've been with you since Disney. So
Yes.
I've seen, yeah, exactly. I've seen the transformation, not only within yourself, but also with your business, and you realizing why you're truly here, and not backing down, and just keep going, and doing it and living it, no matter maybe sometimes how hard it could be.
And there you go, my friend. What an incredible conversation with Christina. I truly hope her story has inspired you to recognize your own power to transform your life. I also forgot to mention earlier that she's grown her business where her clients include doctors and NFL clients as well. We dove into the entrepreneurial journey and the challenges that come with it, especially when you're starting out. And I've got some exciting news for you. I'll be hosting workshops in the near future to provide the guidance you need to navigate the early stages of what it looks like to start your own spiritual business journey. So make sure to click below in the show notes and subscribe to my newsletter to stay in the loop. And yes, money matters, but it's also about empowering you to embrace your spiritual side and make a meaningful impact in life and serving others. And for those of you looking to kickstart your spiritual side hustle, check out the free resource I provide in the show notes below, my spiritual business starter kit and mini course. It's a fantastic resource to get you a head start to my upcoming workshops. If you found today's episode valuable, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend who could benefit from Christina's wisdom. To keep the conversation going, join my private Facebook group. Link is in the show notes. And until next time, keep staying true to yourself, keep going for your dreams, and always, always remember that you are capable of extraordinary things. Thanks for being here, and bye for now.